Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino and Trip Job here, and with Jeff Jenkins. And we're just finishing up our conversation on Taco Bell because, if we can't tell, it's just a point of just great pride for me. So one of the things I find ironic about Taco Bell is when you actually look at the ingredients, calorie-wise, everything, density, vegetables, it's actually one of the healthier fast food options. How did they? So again, we're marketing to the right people. You know your audience. Those people are not necessarily concerned with health, but how does that just slide under the radar that all these other guys are getting away with it? And it's actually pretty good for you relative to most of the other things.
Relative, and it's super friendly for if you're a vegetarian or vegan. Like it, and the thing is those audiences that are vegetarian, that are vegan, that are they know the hacks to get like the good stuff. Yeah. The problem is you never want to sell that. You could make the most
nothing sexy about it.
Nothing sells.
There's nothing sexy about a bean transition from a burrito. Like,
no, there's not. So it's all about the indulgent. You know, the Cheez-It Crunch Wrap that just launched that looks delicious. Clearly not healthy, but there are healthy versions of everything they have on that menu, and that's like the secret sauce that everyone can go there and get something whatever they want.
Yeah, they've done an awesome job. So let's fast forward now. So we were talking a little bit before the break. You've been at Carter's for 5 years now, which in the CMO world is almost 1,000 years.
It's like dog years. Yeah,
we're just killing it out there. So
how was the transition? Okay, to Carter's.
Yeah,
how did you make that first?
So wild transition is simple. That is my belief is that if you're a good marketer and you understand the consumer, all you have to do is apply the same rules and principles.
So everything's a widget.
And so the simple thing was at Taco Bell, we were trying to get those 16-year-olds and we were keeping them till they were 24. Now all I've got to do is find those new expecting parents and keep them for 10 years. It's the same sort of life cycle of a business, just simply one is up at 2 a.m. for different reasons.
But sometimes you have to have, especially if you're going in the roles you're talking about, you have to have senior leadership who gets that and isn't this focus of industry focus.
That is true. And that's one of the hardest things to break into is like people are like, well, and that's been the sort of thing about my career. I've worked in aerospace at NASA. I've worked in entertainment at MTV. I've worked in grocery at Whole Foods, and now retail and clothing and apparel, children's apparel, all different industries. And like sometimes people will try and like, pigeonhole you. And I'm like, Look where I've been. Like it's hard to pigeonhole but it happens because they expect you to know that industry really well.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing for an outsider to understand about marketing is how many things go into it: PR, HR, internal, external, advertising. It is everyone just thinks it's running commercials and campaigns. There's so much more. Even the lines between what is PR and HR have blurred because what you message to your internal people now gets out to the public. So I think it's just a misconception of people don't understand all of the parts that play into marketing.
Analysis. I mean, there's
data, and that brings up a good point. So talk a little bit about what is your day to day? What on a day? Obviously, other than coming to this awesome show and stopping everything else you're doing for priorities, what does your day look like? What would you find most off-putting people that they wouldn't expect you to be doing?
Oh my goodness! I think as you said, the world of marketing is changing every day, and it's never been a more exciting time to be in this industry. Like for me, if you think about it, there was like when they invented television, it was like 40 years of television was the only thing, and then there was the internet and sort of social media, and now it feels like every 5 weeks there's something new. There's a new app, there's a new platform. Now there's AI.
30 years ago there were 6 to 8 forms of marketing. Now there's 250 plus, and that's growing every day. I mean, people that are selling you stuff are advertising you. Amazon makes more money off their advertising platform. They do have selling stuff to some extent.
It is wild. So the whole thing is, my day is very varied. No day is the same. I think, we're in retail, and retail is detail. So when you're in retail, every day you wake up, I don't really sleep well. I get up way too early. Has nothing to do with work, but I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning because I used to play tennis all the time, and that was when I got up to train. And so I got
6 a.m. court time.
6 a.m. court time. So it has stuck with me. So I get up, I look at the daily sales. How do we do yesterday? What can we adapt? Because I believe in the fact it's sales overnight, brand over time. You've got to drive sales overnight, but you have to build a brand over time. And that's where I think most CMOs are caught between sort of a rock and a hard place now. You've got performance marketing and all the things you can do in the lower funnel and all the tactics and all the performance media and all the optimizations you can make. But if you start getting in that world and you forget, hey, I've got to build a brand that people are going to love for 1,000 years or 100 years, you're in big trouble. So my day today can be anything from I'm going next week to shoot a commercial in Toronto. This week I'm optimizing media at the lower funnel. We are just finishing out our cross-channel personalization engine that we're installing in our website. So it is 1,000 different things. I'm also working on PR, as you said. We work with our HR partners to really make sure that the messages we're going to project externally are also projected internally and everything's aligned. And then you think about it, we have earnings calls, we have IR, PR. It's a constant sort of day-to-day is so different for me But that's what gets me up out of bed every morning, because it's like, oh, it's a new challenge every day.
Yeah, and they all feed into each other, right? Like you said, if you're doing all those things in the short term and keeping an eye on the overarching brand, you could have the best brand in the world, but if you're not performing, it's like some restaurants, right? I went to, there's a restaurant, I'm not going to name it, that opened here to all this great hype, and it had all this top of the funnel brand, everyone knew it. I got there, it took me 40 minutes in line to get a burger that wasn't right. It wasn't right.
Yep.
So if you're not executing, then the brand is worthless, because that first experience is really, really important as a new parent, right? What if you come into a store now and all of a sudden the clothes don't fit? You're never coming back. Right. So if you don't have both parts of that, it's unbelievable. So my question, you're in retail.
Yep.
Okay, the retail apocalypse. Man, how long they've been talking about the retail apocalypse. They've been saying it's over, no one's going to brick and mortar, and all of a sudden they wake up and they're like, oh my God, everyone comes into the stores. They're dying for human connection. What is going on in retail? What is the media getting wrong? What are people getting wrong? What are you seeing out there? And let's take e-commerce out of this for a second. Let's just talk the in-store retail. What are you seeing out there right now?
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was, oh, stores are dying. And then suddenly it's like, oh, Gen Z loves stores and Gen Z loves malls. Right. And so I think it is. I mean, COVID was the great sort of like shakeup, and it was, oh my goodness, everything's going to go to e-commerce and stores are going to close. And then suddenly it's like, guess what? Stores are doing really well. Guess what? People are going back into stores. People are looking at it. We're really lucky in the baby business and the kid businesses is when you have your first baby and you're becoming a parent for the first time, the first thing you want to do is touch and feel, right? You want to have that little tiny little bodysuit, little pajamas that you can show your friends. You can post it on Instagram. You can do the sort of social cred.
Yeah.
Look, I'm having
Which is
a baby.
So depressing, by the way. That's the first thing you think. Let me touch it and throw it on Instagram. No, it's a child. Let's keep it. But anyway, yeah.
Totally, right? I mean, there is a whole, like, I mean, look at what is it, the gender reveals, the balloon pops, and like the whole like productions people are doing to create these moments. But it's great for us because people love to go in the store and they want to touch and feel. They want to have that little moment of, oh my goodness, I'm having a child. So stores are one of our strengths. It's a huge asset for us. And I think in a world where retail has changed, Amazon's changed the world. Now, if you look at Target and Walmart, they've changed the world. What you have to be is an omnichannel retailer. You have to do online really well. You have to do stores really well, and you have to connect the two.
Well, I was going to ask about the go-to-market philosophy, because also I believe you know, from a store perspective, I mean, you have your own stores, you've got the ability to sell through other places. So, I mean, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I think it is, we want to be where she shops. That's how we think about it. Mm. She shops at Target for her, household goods. She will do Walmart for groceries. She shops us for, depth and special occasions of baby clothes. There's lots of different reasons to be in different channels. I also think she also wants convenience. And so that's the number one thing. So whether convenience is, hey, I'm at Target, I want to pick something up just because I'm already here, or hey, I want to go and really have a convenient shopping experience where the people that are working in the stores at Carter's are unbelievable resources around baby and child. The person working at Target may be working the baby section and the electronics section and the household goods section. So I think those are the things you're trying to do. And then it's like, how do we build convenience? We do 1 hour delivery of baby clothes, which sounds absurd, but people use it because you have a blowout and you need to get a new little outfit. There is a way for you to do that within 1 hour from almost all of our stores in the U.S.
Yeah, and that's where marketing comes in, right? Because that's something I didn't know that. And again, my kids are in the thick of it in that age, and I didn't know that. I don't know if my wife knew that. I don't know if we have those instances. I don't know what I'm feeding our kids. Maybe too much Taco Bell that they're having such instances coming up.
Do you have it in adult sizes for Nick?
But one of the things that struck me, so I go to One Up in off of Scenic Highway. It's where my in-laws live, and some people say it's about experience, but for me, it's just a neatly organized store that's easy to find what you want. You can look through, because I won't name the department store, but there's a department store you walk into, and it looks like a bomb just got lit off in the middle of the store, and the clothes just exploded in every direction. And there's no organization. Yeah. You walk in, and I don't want to say sterile, because that's the wrong word, but everything is well laid out. It is color organized. It's clear in front of you. You see what you want. You can get it, walk out. Not super expensive. It's a nice experience, which is counter to what they're saying now. Now everything's got to be experiential, and you need to have these people and consultants. I don't need a consultant. I need a onesie. Yeah. Like so talk about just how the stores are laid out psychologically and how you're getting people to do things, because I know that user experience now is what's key to everything.
Oh, and we're investing in store experience and user experience every day. And I think, to your point, what we know is consumers shop by age and gender for kids, right? They start with, I've got a 3-year-old girl, and so that's where we got to make it easy for her to navigate there. Right. But then one of the great things about our stores, and we're doing some really interesting things sort of experientially, it's less about creating this like cool experience, but it's like, how do I keep a kid occupied while mom shops? Right? But that's sort of the thing for us. If you take a kid to a Target, and we love Target, they're a great partner of ours, but they're a 100,000 square foot box. I can't let my kid roam free. in our stores that are 5,000 square feet, you don't worry about your kid getting lost inside of a bigger place. So, but we have these zones. It's for us.
And they're not letting people have those leashes anymore. There was a little time where leashes ever. We stopped that. That's a good thing, at least.
Yeah,
No,
so
but that's part of merchandising is how you think about the whole family experience in your store, right?
yeah, 100%. So we've created zones like games on the floor, those projectile games, so the kids can step on turtles and play like sort of little games on the floor. And but then it's about how do we make it easy for mom to shop so that she can get in, get out. That's partially why we've done the omnichannel, because sometimes mom doesn't want to take the kid out of the car seat. She just wants to be able to pull up to the store, put it in her trunk, and head out. So you got to cater to all those experiences and really merchandise the store. Really, as you think about through her mind or his mindset, about 30% of the shoppers in our stores are male, so they're dads. And
Probably more in an emergency. Like I had to go because the kid went into the clothes with his pool with his clothes on, which he shouldn't have. So now I had to go buy new clothes. So I had to go run out and go get it. That's why I was there. Otherwise, my wife does the shopping. But so. What about e-commerce? And I want to separate these out because I'm going to ask you the inevitable hard question is, how are you tracking those people online that are shopping in stores, and how we're cross-channeling and how we're doing that stuff? Because I've heard a lot of different answers. So first off, how much e-commerce are you doing? How different is the strategy of e-commerce versus in-store retail?
Yeah, I mean, I think 5 years ago, everyone had an e-commerce strategy. I think now everyone has an omni-commerce strategy. Yeah. This sort of notion of like, we've got to be there for her wherever she shops, whenever she shops. And so we have rebuilt our app. When I got to Carter's in 2019, we sort of sat down and said, how do we rethink our app? How is it the passport to parenthood? How do we, when you are in the thick of it, especially in the 0 to 3, you think about you're buying clothes at 3 months, at 6 months, at 9 months, at 12, they're growing at a huge rate. So having an app experience that helps you understand that reminds you what you need, that gives you checklist of, okay, your child's now at the potty training stage, you got to get pull-up pants, like that sort of thing. That digital experience is super important. So what we've really done is really tried to invest in that experience and really think about how do we make that digital shopping experience as sticky as possible and as easy as possible. So if you go into our stores, super easy to navigate. Same thing with our e-commerce
It's a lifetime
site.
Journey, essentially. So,
yeah. It's a life stage journey, right? From 0 to 10, we know sort of how your kid's going to grow, because every kid sort of grows at different rates. But once you're on the curve, if you've got a fast-growing kid, we can understand that. We've seen it before. If you have a kid that's on the regular curve, we can see that, and it's all about giving you the suggestions of what you need at the right time.
Yeah, well, here's a suggestion, because this is one we did wrong. We just assumed always get one size bigger, and then what happens is you put it in the closet and you forget it's there, and you have to go buy new clothes. That was one we just did. That was just I had 2 young kids, so you're just not really paying attention to anything. You're like, buy one size bigger, they're growing fast, and then they're out of a growth spurt, and you're like, oh, I have clothes just sitting here, I forgot about these. So that's a good thing for you guys.
Well, thank you for us.
Talk about data obviously is huge. You're in an app, you're seeing the journey, you're understanding buying patterns, behavior. You have so much data. How is it translating? How are you using that data for the retail experience? Because that's one thing people get wrong. Like you said, they're either e-commerce or retail, but you can use the e-commerce data to influence decisions and how you do things in retail. So how are you using that omni-channel strategy? Yeah,
no, data is the most powerful tool that not just marketing, every business has today, because there's more, you can see more data, you can understand more. And it's 2 things, which is one is you got to use it to make what consumers want you to use the data for is to make their experiences better and easier for them. They don't want it to be the creepy stuff that can show up of like, hey, we've all been tracked across what feels like tracked across the interweb, where you're sitting there and you're saying something, I want to go see this movie, and then suddenly 2 minutes later you get an Instagram ad for that movie while you're sitting there, and you're like, were they listening to me?
Yes.
And the answer is no, they weren't. But we know that your phone's next to that phone, and it's suddenly that person's seen this movie, geolocation, and we know you searched this, and
AI, I believe, is going to make that worse, by the way, because these mics are on and you're transcribing and doing all these things, which is just feeding this data back to a bigger thing that's just cross-referencing. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, AI has its own challenges, right? It's going to accelerate everything, not just marketing. Everything's going to be touched by AI. It feels like right now in the world of AI and the buzz around AI feels like the buzz of when the iPhone and Facebook launched, and sort of like that time around 2007 where everything was going to change.
So I love that you said that, because if we remember, that first iPhone was not great.
It was not
functionality,
great.
And if you remember, the first Android phone was even worse. It was just not a good experience. And what I'm seeing is, and between McDonald's, what happened with AI at McDonald's, where they were getting the orders, someone's like, I need a cheeseburger, and they gave them 37 ketchup packets, and people are just screaming at the AI because it got it all wrong. There are some things I try to transcribe these episodes, and even ChatGPT is like, dude, that's too many words. I'm like, what do you mean it's too many words? I thought you're supposed to be some genius system. What do you mean it's too many freaking words? I try to put logos in, it misspells everything, so it's a good comparison, because iPhone, look what it is now. AI will get there, but the wishes and the dreams and what everyone thinks is happening, we're not there. We're not even close to there yet. This thing still has very strong limitations. I'm also understanding that you're going to go into the world of how much gas is getting, global warming and all this stuff. Like the amount of power it takes to power some of these interactions with ChatGPT, when you start seeing what it is, I mean, it's more than you're using a computer for a week to do one transaction on ChatGPT. So I agree with you. We're not there yet, but what it's paving out and what people are talking about is going to be, it's going to touch everything.
Yeah, no, there's a great quote. I don't know who said it, but they said, you always underestimate what will happen in the next year, but you underestimate what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And I think that's what's happening with AI. People think it's going to change the world tomorrow, but you won't recognize the world in 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, that was what the assembly line did, and that was what so many things, the Industrial Revolution did all these things. So the advice that I give to people is like, look, if you're curious, get on the train now.
Oh, 1,000%.
I don't care if you start with the simplest. You can go on Gemini and just say, generate me an image about this. And just learning how the mannerisms work. Experiment. That is the only advice. If you're worried about it, you're better to be on the train than off the train.
So we used to talk about test and learn. So how does Carter's think about that?
Oh, good thing. Like you stopped the rabbit hole. Thank you.
Every day. We think about it every day. Every day we are testing and learning on our site, on our email, in our stores. We have, I don't know how many tests concurrently running in media. I think it's all about optimization. Right, so we are trying to test and learn daily, and you have to measure, right? And someone once said, measure what you treasure, and so that is like every test has to have a point, has to have a thing, and it has to be a readout, and then you have to make a decision based on that. Yeah. And so we're maniacal about testing, but I think the question is don't test yourself into a rabbit hole and get down there. Keep your head up. Don't lose the forest for the trees.
So that's a great point because it's going to segue to the next question I have. So we're going to separate brand marketing from performance marketing. Okay. So I understand for performance marketing how you're testing. How are you testing brand marketing? How are you understanding what impact some form of marketing has on your long-term brand vision?
Yeah, so I think we look at it from a couple different ways, right? So one is we have our brand health metrics. So we record our brand health metrics. We talk to thousands of consumers every quarter. What's your perception of the brand? How are you often to buy it? What do you think the most trustworthy?
Are you scouring social media for people talking and stuff like that? And you're anything?
We look at natural language.
Okay.
We look at that. We talk to individual consumers. We're always mining it so that we have a baseline of what it is, and then as we run brand marketing, how does that change the perception of the brand? How does it change on social media, right? Social media is the next place, right? Parents right now are Gen Z parents are now becoming this year the largest group of parents out there. They're 26, 27 years old. Their generation that now is like the TikTok generation. So TikTok parents. So we went from an Instagram strategy 5 years ago to now TikTok, which didn't exist, to what's our TikTok social strategy? How do you engage those parents? And the sentiment of the brand has to fit the new platform and what people expect. And that's just like something as a marketer you have to keep fresh.
And you're right, those windows are getting shorter, right? The Facebook generation was a lot longer than the Instagram generation, and the Instagram was a lot longer than the TikTok generation. So what's the next thing? You have no idea.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Right. 1,000%.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is, again, that's why it's called performance, because it's easy to measure. It's much harder. So one of the things we use a lot is we use like Google Trends, right? Is how many people are just looking for you. Is that the top of mouth? Is it there? Does that exist? Because it's a simple way to show it. But what kind of metrics, when you say success, are you doing TV? Are you doing OTT? Where are you finding success in that brand vision? In that brand
marketing? Yeah. And what I would say is the time horizon is what you have to think about. The performance marketing, you can put it on today and you can see it tomorrow, see it the same day, right? Did I get a click on my PMAX Google ad? Yes, no. Did it convert? Yes, no. What was the average order value? What was the dwell time on site? How many pages did they look at? That is easy.
What made them stop? What made them stop?
Right?
Click out?
What they click out? Right? Why'd they bounce? But on brand marketing, you may see an ad on our OTT because we run OTT, we run digital video, we run all the different pieces. But you may not action that until, 3 months later, because for us, you are driven by...
What's the attribution window?
What's the attribution window? And there's really three reasons you buy kids' clothes. One is that you have a special event. The second is your kid grows. And the third is the weather changes, right? Those are the big three triggers of why you buy. So I need to be building my awareness with you right before back to school, and then you might shop at back to school. But if I try to measure, did you buy something because you saw an OTT ad yesterday? Probably not going to be the thing. So we think about it on a longer.
I think there's also, it'd be interesting to get your opinion on going back to the life cycle, but it's the generational and it's the brand building that you made now with the Gen Z's parents.
Yep.
Right? And what is that brand value from them, and how are they interpreting that to their kids that are now entering the parenting stage? How do you think about brand across generations in that way? Because you've got a brand that's been around through multi-generations.
160 years. I feel like you've been sitting in the back of my office listening to our conversations, because that is something we go through every day in the conversation, which is we have the greatest asset ever, which is we have generations of grandparents and parents who love our brand, know our brand, grew up on our brand. But then, how do we keep the brand relevant for that next generation? And so that's the thing. When
that's the Stanley mugs. Right? I mean, there's these brands. These are great. Crocs is another great example of one that how you have to reinvent yourself while keeping your history and pedigree.
1,000%. My grandfather took Stanley lunchboxes when I was a kid. I remember him carrying those to the factory that he worked at, and now they are the hottest thing. That my daughter has a Stanley mug. I'm like, how is this possible?
But isn't it ironic? And I agree with you. But the risk taking is what allowed those brands to come back in. It wasn't a methodical approach. It was, hey, we got to take a risk. It was, let's get Post Malone to wear Crocs. It was I hate influencer marketing as a whole, just because I think it's misunderstood. But those what sparked it. So you have to have a certain level of risk tolerance also to take the risks here.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with the Stanley, the sort of influencers they went after and how they built that entire sort of resurgence around a group of moms that were blogging heavily and being influencers out on the West Coast. You have to be able today to put your brand in someone else's hands and trust that it's going to be okay.
And that is tricky. And not be afraid to get it wrong, because you can't get it right every time. If everyone got it right every time, marketing would look very different. It doesn't work that way.
That is probably it is a risk that you have to do, but it is a risk because now the most powerful media channel out there is no longer TV. No one sits down on 7 o'clock on a Thursday to watch Seinfeld anymore. They are watching everything everywhere, and everything's fragmented. So in order to reach them, like my son, he is an 11-year-old baseball player. What he watches is like baseball influencers and all the things he wants to buy on YouTube. He doesn't have TV. Right. It's YouTube. And that's all he watches. And you're like, in order to reach that, you've got to figure out who is your audience that generation is watching on TikTok, on YouTube. And that's the most powerful media channel, because even the parents of today aren't asking their parents for the same advice that they once were. It used to be, I got all my advice from my parents on parenting. Now I'm going to my community on TikTok, my community on Instagram, and we've got to be in that community, and we've got to be relevant.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to put it. And I asked so much about brand marketing, performance marketing, because our next conversation is going to be more about the role of the CMO and how that changed. But so your strategy, you're always thinking of brand marketing. That's the long-term play. The performance marketing is the short-term play. Talk a little bit about just what you see other companies doing wrong and why we're having such a hard time, how CMOs are turning over so quickly. Are they putting too much pressure on the performance side? Are they forgetting about the brand marketing side? What are you seeing out there? What are you having conversations with other CMOs about?
I think for the most part, the job of the CMO is misunderstood. That is why I think the turnover is, because essentially as soon as sales dip, it's because something in marketing didn't go right. It doesn't, and that's the first easiest place to sort of take, well, the media didn't work, or the ad didn't work, or this. At the end of the day, marketing is more than putting ads on TV. It's more than running performance marketing. It is part of the sort of fabric of understanding the consumer and making sure the consumer is sitting at the center of everything the company is doing and helping drive that strategy into other parts of the company and being sort of very consumer first.
No, absolutely. And I think part of it, maybe we'll get into this when we return from the break, is, and a couple times during my career, marketing leadership coming in right up front, talking to the C-level, what are the expectations? And I think being honest about those expectations. And I think that's a challenge that some CMOs, when they come into a company, maybe those expectations weren't properly aligned. And 18 months later, guess what? If you'd set the expectations, maybe you'd understand there's a chance we're going to be here. But when we come back, why don't we hit that, and we hit a little more on the kind of the CMO tenure. You're listening to the Marketing Mad Men on Extra 106.3.